There was a story that was released based on the findings of one Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon. And this is very important regarding how we are where we are today. Major banks enabled Epstein's crimes, Democratic senators report asserts. Now, again, this should not come as any surprise, but the bigger surprise, of course, which we're going to get to, is regarding 60 Minutes. Deutsche Bank, JP Morgan, and unfortunately Bank of America, which I have no choice right now, but I have to use them, allegedly helped enable convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein by delaying the screening and reporting of his financial transactions, according to a Senate Finance Committee report published Tuesday. The big picture. The report raises questions about how the three banks failed to stop Epstein from moving hundreds of millions of dollars while he was under investigation for sex trafficking. Senator Wyden, the committee's ranking member, and a team of investigators conducted a multi-year probe into transactions that the report says financed Epstein's crimes. Excuse me. According to Wyden's report, all three banks waited until 2019, after Epstein was arrested on sex trafficking charges, to retroactively flag thousands of questionable transactions that moved more than $1.4 billion in and out of his accounts over the course of nearly 2 decades. So it's not like this was a glaring oversight of a one-time circumstance. No, this is decades and decades of aiding and abetting child sex trafficking, among other things. That included Deutsche Bank later flagging $250 million in suspicious wire transfers, including payments to women in Russia and elsewhere in Eastern Europe. The investigation also alleges that B of A didn't screen and report $170 million in payments from former Apollo Global Management CEO Leon Black, who we know is one of the biggest scum buckets that's ever walked the earth, and unfortunately has escaped due process, to Epstein until 2020. Black was Epstein's single largest source of funding, the report said. Wyden's staff calculated that 90% of Epstein's income over a 5-year period came from Leon Black. Susan Estridge, an attorney for Leon Black, said in a statement, Senator Wyden's assertions are outrageous and false, aren't they always? Calling the report's findings completely baseless. Baseless. They're baseless. No honesty and integrity there. Wyden's report also claims JP Morgan Chase likely violated federal anti-money laundering law by underreporting Epstein's activity. The report accuses JP Morgan Chase executives of coaching Epstein on how to withdraw cash through shell companies instead of his personal accounts and helping conceal information. Please scroll down, Ben. The report shows exactly how Wall Street protected Epstein and enabled his sex trafficking for decades. The ex-account for Democrats on the Senate's Finance Committee wrote, the American people deserve to know who funded Epstein's sex trafficking crimes. Well, we already have an idea about that. The B of A spokesperson said in a statement, we take our legal and regulatory obligations seriously. And as we have previously said, the bank did not facilitate wrongdoing. Oh, how do you know that? This is what you call running cover. We have a little bit more now, Teresa, but thank you for pointing that out. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, guys, please make sure that you do. In a statement, Deutsche Bank said it regrets its past with Epstein and that it has been transparent in addressing deficiencies and investing in strengthening our controlled environment in parallel. A JP Morgan Chase spokesperson told Axios in a statement, we strongly disagree with the report's conclusions, which are based on many false claims contradicted by easily found public information. The spokesperson added that it began flagging suspicious transactions for the government as early as 2002 and acted appropriately to what we knew it, when we knew it, and as the law requires. Yeah, sure you did. One day after Wyden released the report, New Mexico sued Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche and the Justice Department, seeking files related to Epstein. The lawsuit claims the DOJ unlawfully withheld records that could identify witnesses, victims, and additional illegal conduct. The state is conducting its own investigation into Epstein, following allegations that he trafficked and sexually abused girls and women at a property he owned outside Santa Fe. So as you can see, when you are this wealthy and this powerful, you have a lot of control over a lot of different real estate throughout the United States. And this, again, should come as absolutely no surprise to anybody. But what ultimately is the issue here, and I know a lot of times people want to say, well, it's Jeffrey Epstein, and he definitely bears a brunt of responsibility, which he certainly does. But the systems are in place to protect people like Epstein, to protect people like Trump, to protect all of these organizations. There is a reason why the most powerful individual in this entire fiasco has been Epstein's right-hand man, or should we say his actual benefactor. Leon Black played a big role, but not nearly as big as Les Wexner. He's as big as anybody out there. And he's still walking free. Nothing has come to him directly. Now, a lot of this, as you can imagine, is directly related to everything as it connects to Israel. And that's a big reason why so much of everything we're seeing right now, and I have to say, and we're gonna, I don't want people to think that when it comes to electoral politics, that we should be making any exceptions. And I understand that everybody has a very hard line regarding what we should accept, what we shouldn't accept, and are there ever exceptions to the rule? I know right now there's a lot of people out there who are getting on Abdul Saeed for accepting the support from Kamala Harris. As far as I'm concerned, politics is a dirty business. It's a blood sport in many ways. Now, if he turns around and says that he supports her, knowing full well what we know already about his support for these and, you know, her support for the genocide, etc., it's a very interesting power dynamic. But just remember, I said a long time ago, I said this about when Jen was running for office, I will say this now. I want people to remember a very important caveat here. You do not have to be dirty to be in politics. It is not a prerequisite. But you do have to work with people that are. You don't have a choice. If you think you can accomplish anything in this world by not working with people that have succumbed to the system or willfully entered it and embraced it and are now of it, go play in the sandbox, because that's where you'll always play. And again, as I said, you do not have to compromise. When you have an opportunity to play power politics, you have to play it. Now, if you find people getting a little too fast and loose with the truth when it comes to something like genocide or the banking system, I spoke with a good friend a little while ago about what actually went down with Shama Sawant's campaign over in Washington, in Seattle specifically. And it turns out, as many would probably imagine, there's a lot of ego problems that exist in left populist politics. Now, when you get down to brass tacks, when you get down to what the real problem is, you basically have two things that you can do economically in this system. And only two things. You can do BDS, and you can form worker co-ops. Those are your two best options within this broken system. It sets the most precedent that you can have for the future. And economically, it does make a difference. If you are willing to hit them where it hurts the most, which is in the pocketbook, then change can happen. There is no other way. Do not allow anybody to fall in a false sense of security thinking that that's the reason. And anytime you get distracted by anything else that is surrounding these circumstances, it's just a distraction, nothing more. And I am not here, and I am not here to just fully scrutinize Shama Sawant, because I have no doubt that she made mistakes. And I can say that because we used our own money to help her. But the ego knows no bounds in politics, even when it's people that are working on behalf of what we're trying to accomplish here in this very broken system. So when we see that people are distracted and are kind of missing the point here as to why the Epstein story is so significant, these problems exist. And unfortunately, we have politicized child sex trafficking in the United States. That's a big problem. And just like when you form these coalitions with various people and you think that you can close off certain areas that, oh, we don't have to work with them, we don't have to, again, I've often said, I am pretty much willing to break any bread with anybody who is not taking the corporate special interest money, and we can figure out ways to communicate, to work together. That also pertains in many respects to what's going on with the genocide, because so much of that is connected. And if it is connected, then where is the solution? The solution will never come from thinking that, and again, I know I use this term loosely because, again, I don't want anybody to think that I am shifting my position, because I'm not. But purity tests, when people complain about them, come in many different forms. If you think that it's not worth in a Democratic primary, if it is to your advantage, for example, or any primary for that matter, to not work with the DSA if they're willing to help you, that's a big mistake. Now, do I think the DSA is perfect? Absolutely not. In fact, I have a lot of problems with them. I think that they are way too loyal to the Democratic Party establishment, but I also think that they do a lot of good grassroots on the ground help for a lot of campaigns that desperately need it. So you have to take the good with the bad. It's not an easy, it's not an easy lane to navigate. It's not. But I also know that when you're trying to break through, that's where the issue of the purity test comes into play, if you can't form enough coalitions with people who are willing to help. Like I said, sandbox, you don't have to be dirtied by the sandbox, but there are people in the sandbox who are dirty. And you have no choice but to play in that box. You just have to protect your area. That's the key. If you guys haven't already, please like and share the stream. And I also do not want anyone to think that you can't win and that the only way to win is to sell out. That's not true. There is an it factor that certain candidates have that I can't put into words. I can't explain what it is. I just know it when I see it. I sense it. And then once you see it, you recognize it, you can't deny it. Zohar Mamdani is somebody who has that. Abdullah Saeed is another person who has it. The dynamicism of what they bring to the table is something that often supersedes essentially everything else that comes with the issues within the political arena. Certain people are tasked with doing certain jobs or responsibilities, and that's what they have to do. That is their responsibility. That is their cross to bear. That is what they need to do. And if you do not do that, you will never succeed. And the other thing that I mentioned that I think is also very important here is recognizing that when it comes to being involved in electoral politics, presidential elections are the last thing that should be of your concern, because it's the least that you can make an impact on with a grassroots initiative. And I know that there are a lot of people here that are going to get excited about AOC running. Some are also going to get excited about Ro Khanna running. But I'm telling you right now, when you get right down to it, that is the least of your concerns. At least it should be. Most of your concerns are about tangible ways economically that you can make a difference. If the powers that be, like Jeffrey Epstein once did, uses our corporate banking structure to facilitate, whether it's sex trafficking, endless war, corrupt banking initiatives, insider trading, you name it. No interest loans. In addition, you have to remember that there are things that we can do that can make a difference. So don't deny yourselves those avenues where we can really have an impact. One of the ways you tax wealth, if you can't have it done through legislation, is you enact that change at the local and even the state level. BDS works. Where would I tell people to put their money if they're not going to put it in a bank? Put it in hard assets. That's what I always say. And if you could do it without debt, that's the goal.